you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Oh, wow, I stole it from Aaron, lady. Old habits of 15 years die hard, folks. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, being part of the Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law, because she never liked you anyway. I mean, have you seen yourself lately? Maybe I should do stepmom-in-law, or wait, what's the opposite of never mind. I don't do this marriage divorce stuff and all that crap. Skipped all that, so I don't know all the terms. Anyway, guys, welcome to the big show. For 15 years, we've been bringing the smartest people in the world, the people who share with you the knowledge they've learned over a lifetime and dispense it to you in this juicy little category we call up to an hour, chatting with people on the Chris Voss Show podcast. And the gift of giving is the most important thing. We are in that season right now. If you're watching this 10 years from now, we're in Thanksgiving just after that. And it's time to share. I mean, quit hoarding the Chris Voss Show, damn it, from your friends, family, and relatives. Quit being a hoarder. Share the damn show already. Tell them to go to iTunes to subscribe to the show. Tell them to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and Chris Voss Facebook. Subscribe to that LinkedIn newsletter too, in the 130,000 LinkedIn group. This is the first time in 15 years I've called my audience hoarders. Wow, that's great. We're going to be talking with an amazing young lady today. She is going to enlighten us in amplifying trust in leaders, teams, and organizations. Julie Holunga joins us on the show today. She's going to be talking to us about leadership. She's a trainer and she's a coach, and everything that she does. She develops professionals to amplify their influence and impact. The most sustainable and motivating program she offers is a multi-month program, including professional development programs to build skills and individual coaching to problem solve. Following the skill building phase, she works with teams to instill the trusted voice paradigm to develop collaborative patterns that deliver value. Through these programs, leaders get out of their own way, developing trusting relationships with key stakeholders and have a positive impact on the organization's bottom line. Her expertise lies with professional services, law, accounting, and investment firms with specialization in the careers of female leaders. She also has a wonderful TED Talk as well on the power of leadership language. Welcome to the show, Julie. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you as well. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Sure. It's pretty easy. It's julieholunga.com, and that's HOLUNGA.
There you go. So, Julie, give us a 30,000 overview of what you do and how you do it in your words.
Sure. So I'm on a mission to rid the world of lazy leaders, because I know that the world really needs leaders who communicate clearly and directly, don't sugarcoat things, that they see conflict as a necessity.
I love this already.
Yeah.
I love conflict. Battle.
Yeah, I can tell. And that they use strong leadership language. So I grew up overseas in Paris and New Delhi and Hong Kong, and I really developed a curiosity in people during those 7 years. And so I have a lot of friends who ridicule me because I'm always asking them about the day-to-day of their jobs, that I want to picture what they do on any given day. So
Who are you for that?
Yeah, because they say, why do you ask so many questions? And because I don't understand. I want to know what the surgeon does, when he shows up in the morning. And I want to know what the CIA agent does when she shows up to work in the morning or the evening.
Maybe they don't want to tell you because they're just on like OnlyFans all day, or watching YouTube videos or something. I don't know what OnlyFans.
I don't think these two. Maybe others are, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's funny. They don't want to tell you. maybe they just don't think about what they do. They're just in kind of a mode of subconscious thing, and they haven't really given much thought to it. But that's probably what you do, is you help them start thinking consciously about what they're doing, and maybe more present and more strategic, maybe.
Yes.
Lead better.
Right. So stop being lazy and flip it to that.
Yeah.
Deliberate.
I like you just go right to the point. Stop being fucking lazy, eh? I'm trying to dress it up and be nice and just be like, maybe they're not lazy. And you're just like, they're lazy.
Yeah. And most of the time, Chris, all comic aside, most of the time it's not intentional.
Oh,
They're
okay.
just, right. We're all so busy. We don't think about it. We don't really think it matters or it makes a difference. And then they meet me and they realize, oh, it does matter.
It does matter.
Yeah.
Making a difference matters. So give us a little bit about your personal history, your hero's journey. How did you grow up and how did you get into the field that you're in?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I grew up overseas. My dad was a banker with Citibank. At the time, it was called Citibank, and moved back to New York in 8th grade. This was the mid 80s. So big hair, which, at the time, I guess was a good thing. But to me, it was always a struggle.
I grew up in that era. I mean, all the chicks. In fact, I saw a meme the other day that had pictures of all the girls in my high school who had that big hair.
Yeah.
And there was a joke was they contributed to about 30% of the loss of the ozone layer.
You were going to say that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine was just naturally big. So I would like to say I did not contribute. I didn't need any hairspray. But so grew up in New York, just outside of New York City. But always had this in me of wanting to do things differently and not wanting to, as I said before, my friends laugh at me like, why do you ask so many questions about my work? That I knew in high school that I was different, that I didn't want to stay in New York, that I didn't see New York as the center of the universe. And went to college, met my now husband, who's Canadian, from a tiny town very far up north in Canada. And we have moved around from Boston to Calgary, and we're now outside of Denver because I knew that just the life that I had grown up, that was constantly changing. That's very much part of my bones. And I find myself liking change a lot. And I know that's where it comes from.
Let me ask you this, because you grew up with more of an international flair than I did. My parents moved around a lot when we were kids, but yours was more international. Paris, New Delhi, Hong Kong, and then New York, which is the weirdest country of all. I'm just kidding. And do you think that it kind of taught you to embrace change, to, you had to kind of learn, you were asking probably a lot of questions because, you're going to different environments, different languages. It seems like people that move around when they're young, if it doesn't totally traumatize them, military brats and stuff,
right?
They kind of learn to be, adaptive to change, be more diverse. They seem like they're a little bit more pliable as human beings to change, maybe.
I would say for me personally, absolutely. That, change will throw me just like change can throw other people, but I tend to get on board with that change pretty quickly. And I had to be adaptable because most of the time we moved at the start of a school year, but sometimes we didn't. So coming in January, hey, here's the new girl. And, even moving back to New York in 8th grade, right? Which middle school is awful no matter where you live. That I remember distinctly people talking to me really loudly. And then when I responded, they would say, oh, you speak English really well. And then I would remind them, we went to kindergarten together. I was born here. I spent the first 5 years of my life here with you. But, they thought, the question was always, do you speak Japanese? And I was like, no, I lived in Hong Kong. Okay, never mind. No, I don't speak Japanese, and I won't further that answer. But it was, that 5 years moving back to New York before moving to college was probably some of the hardest in my life. Just never fully adapting back into that culture, and because I was so used to every 6 months, new people coming into the school. So there was no such thing. Like I remember my mom coming home from school and complaining about something in 8th grade and my mom teaching me the word click. I'd never heard that word before. because we didn't have it, because things were constantly changing. And, I lived in India when Indira Gandhi was assassinated. So talk about massive change.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember my mom always saying, you'll never forget this day. You'll never forget where you were. You'll never forget the conversations you had, because that's how she remembered, where she was when JFK was assassinated. So having gone through that experience, it's very hard to then come back to a community that has been with itself for, 13 years at that point.
There you go. And so that made it so you ask questions. You it's one of the ways you learn, especially when you're in a new environment. And questions, I think it was Anthony Robbins' book, his second book that came out that talked about the importance of questions that I really tuned in. And questions help you identify so much things. They help you learn. They help you question paradigms, challenge paradigms. And I think that's a little bit of what you help people do. Take a look at their paradigms and how they're operating and how they can improve it. Is that correct?
Exactly. And especially I find, I talk to a lot of teams and individuals about trust, right? That seems to be, from my perspective, my experience in doing this work for 2 decades, is that I think of trust as roots, right? They're underneath the ground. You don't see them. But it is the root. Trust is the root of everything. So if you don't have trust, then people aren't going to go above and beyond to produce and to be innovative and to problem solve and to deliver quality goods or services. And from my experience, asking those questions, it's such a great way to build trust. One, like, people don't do it. And so when you ask someone a question and you're really listening for the answer, you're building trust. And if you're asking questions that you don't know the answer to already, even better, you're making people feel heard and you're building trust.
You're showing a genuine interest in them.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I still fake it though. When I ask questions, I don't really care what the answer is for my employees. So I just ask them questions and I go, no, shut up and go do your work.
So you ask questions for a living. So,
well, this is different. This is the fun part I enjoy. My employees I abuse wholly. So this is what, I need someone like you to give me good advice. Yeah. So how do we people right now in the audience are like, how mean is he to his employees? What's going on over there at the Chris Voss Show?
Yeah, and I'm guessing your employees are laughing and rolling their eyes, but
I'm getting messages from HR right now. So there you go. So how does a leader convey trust, exemplify trust, encourage trust, and seem like he's trustworthy? Does this mean I have to stop stealing people's lunches out of the fridge and stuff?
Probably start there. Yeah, that's a good step one.
All right.
Yeah. So I look at trust. Yeah. Right. Okay. I look at trust in 4 pillars, and this is some work. I highly recommend the book called The Thin Book of Trust. I mean, you can read it in a day, couple hours.
Should I be able to trust something that thin?
Yes.
Okay.
Because from my perspective, like we were talking before we came on about all these great books out there, but I don't know about our listeners, but I'm inundated by information all the time. Read this book, listen to this. So I really enjoy this. But they talk about, and this is my perspective as well in all of my work in my own primary research, is that there are 4 pillars of trust. There's care, meaning, Chris, I really care about your success. There's sincerity, meaning I mean what I say and I do as I say, right? So I'm not going to talk out of one side of my mouth and say, yeah, Chris, you're going to be promoted, and then go to the next person down the hall and tell them they're up for promotion for the same role.
No, I got to stop that.
Yeah. Stop doing that. It's a sense of reliability. So if I say, hey, Chris, I'll send you that report by the end of the day, I do it. And if I'm not going to, if for whatever reason something gets in the way or I don't have all the information I need, that I let you know when I realize this isn't going to get done by the end of the day. That builds trust. And then the final pillar and piece is around competency. And competency, really, this is a piece that most people don't think about.
That's the one we fail all the time.
Yes. And most of the time, it's not the individual's fault. So it's most of the time it's, hey, Chris, you're really successful over here in this project A. So I'm going to give you project Z. because you're successful here. Therefore, I'm making the assumptions you're going to be successful over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Chris, you're excited about the opportunity. You try something out, you do something new, and you realize, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have the skills. I don't have the competencies. I don't have the resources, but I'm not going to let anyone know about that because I don't want to ask for help, which a lot of people feel if they ask for help, they're showing a sign of weakness, right? And so what happens is then people, whether it's one or two of those pillars where trust has been broken, all of a sudden, I don't trust Chris because I gave him this Project Z and he's completely failing. Mm-hmm. And instead, when I work with teams or individuals and I facilitate the conversation around trust, all of a sudden what comes out when we peel back that onion is that I really do think that Chris cares about me. He's reliable. He does what he says he's going to do. But the piece where it's missing is he's not sincere. Oh. He says one thing to one person and then he says something else to someone else. And once we identify, here's the pillar or maybe two pillars where trust has been broken, it's a much easier conversation to have than just, I don't trust you and I don't know what to do about it.
We used to have the rule in my office that we never talk shit behind each other's backs. Right. We just talk about it openly in the office. Mm-hmm. And pretty much haze and shame each other in the office. And then that way, I always said, right. I used to have people that come up to me and say, I like you, Chris, more than most anybody I know. And I go, why? Is it my incredible, charming, don't just stop with the joke. And I would say, why? And because you talk straight to everybody. And you give some tough love, but you talk straight to everybody. You tell everyone what you think. And if you like someone, you tell them that you like them or it gets communicated. If you don't like someone, it gets communicated very effectively to them in person because you don't have a problem dressing them down. Right. And so it's funny that way. Yeah. I've heard that from usually a lot of women because women, there's a lot of cattiness that goes on between women to women. And so usually they really like that with me because I say what I think and do what I say and all the difference. Although I probably have hurt some feelings, but I don't really care.
Well, you're sincere. But
I'm sincerely an asshole.
Well, sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes. And I get that question all the time. So you just broke the seal there. What do I do if I'm working with someone who's an asshole and is digging their heels in and doesn't want to change?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a whole nother 2-hour conversation. But
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So let me ask you this, is because we're in this topic, you talk about having people use more direct language and be more honest and straightforward and not do sort of fluffy language where they're like, that sort of thing. How do you encourage that? What sort of strong language do you encourage? Is it tough love? Is it being direct? Is it insulting the hell out of people?
No, I don't recommend that, Chris.
Oh, just which part?
The insulting part.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. Sorry to break your bubble there, but I look at, so there's strong leadership language, right? You're speaking with conviction and it tends to be direct. Direct sometimes people are like, they hear direct and I can't do that. And in fact, when I'm talking about the language, it's the vocabulary, it's the choice of words you're using. Being direct actually can be really helpful for people, right? If there's any, you said fluffiness or grayness around something, they don't know what to do. Yeah. So as opposed to weak leadership language, it's conditional. I think that maybe I could suggest that we do this, or I believe that this is a good idea, as opposed to, I recommend we take this course of action. Or I suggest, given my experience, that we go down this road. And the big difference that I talk about when people are like, I can't speak directly, or that it seems harsh. The balance is not so much in the word choice, but in the tone. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the tone at one end can be super aggressive. And I know you were joking, but you're going to do as I say, and I don't want to discuss it. That's super aggressive, right? That's not a conversation.
Yeah. My favorite direct is shut up and go do your work and get the hell out of my office.
Right.
Is that too direct?
Yeah, just slightly.
Damn.
And also the tone, right? The tone of
Oh,
that.
is it the tone?
Yeah.
So if I smile when I say, is this like a game that I play with my dogs where I'll cuss up my dogs, but I'll say, you're a cutie.
Right.
And I swear at them and people are like, you're swearing at your dog. What kind of, and I'm like, it's about the tone I use.
It is totally the tone. Now, I
Wow.
still would not recommend shut up and go do your work.
How about 4-letter expletives?
No.
Damn.
Although it feels really good to say them.
You're taking away everything I love.
I know. And I'm just making you a better leader, so you're welcome.
Oh.
Right? We have the tone at that one end. But the other end is like being too meek. Right? And saying, well, I don't know. And I find I'm doing this, like we get small into ourselves. Leaders become smaller. They move away from the table. They cross their arms. Then it goes into a lot of body language, right? So I think that maybe this is a good idea. No, that's way too meek. And it's finding this balance depending on the situation, depending on the circumstances, depending on the people involved. And I know what's going through your listeners' minds is like, oh my gosh, I have to figure this out for every person I talk to. I'm going to have to change the way I talk. Yes, you do. Oh. And it's not something that you necessarily need to memorize like a recipe. When I talk to Chris, I do this. When I talk to Jane, I do this. When I talk to Madeline, I do this. It's not necessarily that, but it's being very conscious and deliberate in how you are engaging with people that all of a sudden it will become natural and you won't have to think about the recipe, right? Like I'm at the point in cooking dinner, I don't want a recipe. It takes too much thought and effort. I just want to be able to make chili and I know what things I'm going to pour in and about how much chili seasoning I need, right? So it's just you get familiar with this and you practice it. It's not easy. I'm not going to say that it's easy. But instead of being that lazy leader, you're being a deliberate leader. You're being thoughtful. Who's my audience? What's the message they need to hear? What's the impact I want to have? What's the goal for me in this conversation? How am I trying to influence them?
There you go. So, there's an old saying. What was it I learned in sales a long time ago? You could say, it was Tony Alva taught it to me. He said, you can say almost anything to anyone if you smile. So I don't know, maybe does that play into the tonality thing?
A bit, but I'm going to push back that I don't think you can say just about anything.
You knew where I was going with that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, the other thing I find really important when dealing with people on a one-on-one basis or directly is being present, looking them in the eyes, reading their facial expressions, being present with them and trying to kind of have like mind meld sort of thing with them, not that full Star Trek weirdo shit, but just like letting them know that, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm present with you. What the fuck do you want?
Right.
That sort of thing. not the last part. So let me ask you this. Talking directly, people, we live in an environment now that's gone complete emotionalism. We live in a society that's gone complete emotionalism, and everybody's got a fragile, tragic sort of thing going on. We live in this environment of corporate environments where there's now microaggressions, which makes me want to punch people in the face when I hear microaggressions, and people are just, slighted because, I don't know, you didn't look at them when you were talking to them or something, and now they're offended. So how does what you're talking about, being direct with people in language, fit into this whole microaggression? My feelings got hurt because Chris's color of shirt was too bright and it's clearly offends my religion or something. How do we balance that?
Yeah. So, the thing, like all joking aside, I do and have been the receiver of microaggressions, 20 years ago. Oh, you're pregnant, so you're probably not coming back to work. And that was never my plan. That was not, that happened so many times. And when I was pregnant with my colleague, who was a little bit older than I am, a man, his wife was pregnant at the same time. And we would be in the kitchen, chit-chatting, and we were good friends. And I would get these asinine comments, and he wouldn't. And so there was I was completely diminished in terms of what I could do and what I...
So was that another woman doing it to you?
Both.
Both. So both the men and the woman.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have been a receiver of microaggressions. I see what you're saying now, that, again, I go back to, I think there is a laziness factor going on in this world. And I've gotten pushback on that, but I have, hey, you want to make a lot of money?
Right.
Work hard. Like my son comes home, he's 20 and he's like, talking about this person making all this money and this person having a boat and second house. I was like, then work really hard. You want to, you're an engineer, stay in your engineering classes, work really hard. You'll get any job you want. And I see this laziness of, I want to be promoted. I want to work on the best projects or engagements or clients. I want. Okay, great. What are you going to give? Mm-hmm. What are you offering? What is the value that you bring to the organization? So to go back to your question of the directness, I see direct as give me the information that I need to hear. Okay. Right? It's not being mean or, just do as I say and get out of here, but really be as clear as you can be when you're communicating to someone and do it in a way that they can hear it. If you know that they're going to anticipate, what are the questions they're going to ask? If you've noticed in the past, they always are asking for proof. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we know that this is the right idea? Show up with data. If they consistently ask you about, well, what is this going to do to our customers? And what's the impact it's going to have on our team? Bring that information. It's anecdotal, maybe, but bring them the stories that you've heard. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're the kind of person that ask about, well, how does this look when we lay it out? What's the actual process? How do we implement this? Mm-hmm. Then bring a thought. Doesn't mean it's the plan, but just think about, even if it's, I always tell people, even if it's like opening up the calendar invite to click the Zoom link, or you're walking down the hall, hopefully to meet with someone in person, that you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to meet with Chris. He tends to ask me these kind of questions. Okay, that's what I'm going to be prepared for. And I'm going to maybe ask him some questions around that.
Mm-hmm. And you highlight something that's really important that leaders need to understand. Your audience, or technically your employees or whatever it is, it could be your vendors, your board, et cetera, et cetera. They're not a monolith of people. You just can't bark the same way to all of them. You're a salesperson. I mean, that's really what leadership and being a CEO is. You're the people will be like, Chris, how did you become a CEO? And you love talking to people. It's like, I don't know, I was an introvert and then I had to become a CEO. And once I became a CEO, I realized that I had to sell to everybody. I had to sell to vendors. I had to sell to employees. But the one thing you learn in sales is that people are different, and you've got to adapt to what their style of buying and selling. And you're trying to sell your ideas for the corporation, your vision for the corporation, what you want them to achieve or do, or how you can tap into them to help them achieve what they want to do, so you can do it in servant leadership. But they're all different, and so you've got to recognize that in your team, that you've got to approach each of them different, motivate them differently. They have different things, and then some people you just have to throw out a second story window. So that's a whole different level of motivation. Right. It's very direct, though. So
yeah, it is direct. It is, but it's the original influencer. Right? Like it's
the throwing out the window, the second story?
No. CEOs are influencers, right? And I don't mean, they're selling a product online, but that's what they do all day, whether it's their board, their employees, their C-suite team. They're influencing them to follow a vision or a mission that they've created or identified.
I've thought about just throwing people out of the second story window all day long. That or adding more stories to my office building. So there you go. So instead of avoiding it, you talk about making conflict constructive. How do we make conflict constructive? Do we have to put away the spears or something? What?
Oh, yes. First and foremost, put away the daggers. What I like to share with people is that conflict can be really good, and in fact is pretty imperative. It's a necessity if you're trying to be innovative. If you're trying to come up with a solution to a problem that you haven't seen before, whether it's within your own company, whether it's with your customers or clients, we need that pushback. Nothing great happens when everyone sits in a room and agrees with each other. Right?
That's a good point. That should be on a shirt or a cup.
It should be.
Put it in the conference room.
Yeah, exactly. But if we think of like when people are pushing back and not just agreeing with us, better ideas come to the surface. So that's what I mean by constructive.
I see. So
Yeah.
people are, it's the challenge of ideas, the battle
Exactly.
of ideas, the battle for the best idea, to find the best idea, as it were.
That's right.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that I think most people avoid conflict, right? Even the people who say, "Oh, I love it," it totally energizes me. They do it wrong. It's not productive. And when I think about conflict, going into that situation is to think about, how do I want to feel afterwards? And what do I want to do afterwards? Right. And if you can think of it that way, you can go into a hard conversation, or if you're on a team and you're trying to figure out the next best thing, or you're trying to be innovative, to think, I want these relationships really matter to me, or these relationships really matter to me, and these ones over here, not so much. Yeah. And that's being honest, right?
Yep. You throw those people out the second story window.
You might throw them out, or you might just kind of push them
slam
aside
up against the wall, something like
that. Yeah, whatever it might be.
Okay.
And instead, when I talk about constructive conflict, it's really thinking about what's the problem at hand and focusing on that and not on the person. Because when conflict gets ugly and when we avoid it, it's when we're focusing on the person. But instead, think about, okay, so this just happened with a client of mine. We worked through it. She was writing a new job description for herself, and she was about to position it to the leaders, and they hired someone, and she thought that they hired someone to do that job that she was writing a new description for. So she was so focused on the individuals who made that decision, the person that they hired, the people all involved. And instead, what we ended up doing is stepping back and saying, okay, what's actually the challenge here? Well, I really want to play that role, and I know I can add value this way to the firm. Okay, so let's have the conversation from that standpoint. And it completely shifted her own mindset, but then the conversation she ended up having with her leader.
There you go.
You stay focused, and a better solution comes out of it.
Yeah. And
it's hard to do.
A lot of it seems to be just good communication.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you specialize in working in the careers of female leaders. Women are more passive in femininity than men are. Men are very aggressive. We have very aggressive language. We throw people out of second story windows because we have that wonderful upper body strength. Yeah. So do you find that women in business and women leaders struggle with being that direct? I mean, sometimes, women sometimes just don't want to say the truth to you because they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they're very egalitarian. So that's female nature. So do you find that that's a challenge or hurdle a lot of women have to overcome?
Yeah. So I would say that I have women who are on both sides of the spectrum, but women tend to be in this double bind situation. If they are demonstrate too much empathy, they're seen as meek, and they're not going to be considered for that higher position. If they are too, and these are not my words, but words that people have come to me with, if they're too cutthroat, then they don't have enough empathy. They can't really lead a team. So it's finding this, it's a very small amplitude that they can play in, where men can play in a much bigger amplitude before they're considered, well, you said the word first, but considered an asshole, right? Or considered too meek. Yeah. Where women have this very small amplitude to play in. And again, what I talk about is what's needed in this situation? And how do you stay within that amplitude? And most of the time, to go back to the start of our conversation, it's asking a lot of questions, making people feel heard. And also saying, here's the direction we're going in. This is going to be hard. Maybe we're going to have to do some layoffs, or maybe we're going to have to make some hard decisions. We're going to have to cut budgets, but this is what we're getting to. How does that sit with you?
Asking questions and polling them and, getting people on board and getting people involved, making them feel like they're engaged or you're engaged with them and that they belong to something that's important rather than just someone barking orders at them all day, which I still enjoy.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's a great callback joke of the show. You talk about in your first TED Talk, you talked about don't let your words sabotage your career. What are some ways that we let words sabotage our careers?
Well, it's using that conditional language and saying something like, I think that this is a good idea. It puts you in this one down position. So all of a sudden you're planting these seeds of doubt in your audience.
Oh, wow.
And if we were just talking about influencing people, right? If you're planting a seed of doubt, it's going to be that much harder to influence them.
Oh, interesting.
And so really helping them think, what are the words that really are key for me to use to help me influence in this situation? Another one that I really would love for people to stop doing is apologizing. Stop saying sorry if there's no reason to say sorry. If you're late, yes, apologize. Mm-hmm. If this happened to a client of mine, he was waiting for materials to deliver to his board, and there was the CFO consistently, month after month, sent in materials too late. Then those materials weren't included in the information sent to the board before the board meeting.
Wow.
And he did everything. He involved everyone under the sun. He tried everything to get this material to come to him on time. Mm-hmm. And then the CFO finally came to him and said, my stuff never gets included, right? So in that moment, my client had a choice to say, I'm going to throw you out the second floor window, right? Or to say, let's figure this out together. And he did a third choice, which I don't recommend, is he took on the ownership of this guy's mistake and this guy. And he said, I'm so sorry it doesn't get included every month.
Wow.
And what he was doing on reflection was he was trying to soften the environment because it was high tension, high stakes. It's the CFO. And he admitted to me privately that there was a lot of fear involved. This guy was pretty cutthroat. He threw everyone and anyone under the bus to make himself look better.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was
Sounds
not
like
a
this was the way the guy was doing it.
And by the way, had been doing it for 35 years and no one called him on it.
Wow.
So the culture of the organization was allowing it. This guy then apologizes and said, I'm sorry, it doesn't get included. Wow. But this was the fascinating thing is then the CFO got even angry at him and said, why did you apologize? I know that I'm making a mistake. I know that I'm getting the materials to you late. Why did you just apologize? And my client said he just got smaller and smaller and smaller. He felt so tiny. And by the way, he's 6'2". Like there's nothing small about him.
It's a real dick narcissistic type of move going on here.
Absolutely.
Very manipulative.
My client fed right into that unknowingly.
I would have punched him back.
Ease things, but fed right into that.
I would have found a third story. Throw that guy in.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot going on there, right? The culture of the teams that allowed this behavior to go on for a long, long time, right? And that's, again, a whole nother conversation. But really thinking about what are you apologizing for? And what my client said to me was he was apologizing because this guy looked bad every single month in front of the board. And he did feel bad. He had empathy for this guy, right? And so, what could you have said differently? What could you have done differently in that moment to express the empathy, but also, this is your fault, buddy, CFO. Get your stuff to me on time.
Yeah. Well, he's another dude, so I wouldn't do empathy. I just smack him between the eyes with not physically, but I'd just be like, this is you fucking up. This is on you, man. Don't try and put this on me. But that's how other guys will talk to each other.
But Chris, if you're talking about a power differential, right? This is a CFO and you're like a middle manager.
You'd be surprised what I've been accused of. Like, that's actually how I got successful working for other people, is because we had some balls out conversations in front of people, and people went, he's leadership material. We should advance him. I have some real asshole problems sometimes, but they don't seem to be problems. Actually, they seem to work out. But no, it's you're right. There needs to be empathy. I mean, certain people might get fired. I seem to have a little bit of a dark triad sort of issue, but by design, actually, it's survival mode. But yeah, I mean, you just have to be direct with people. You just got to be, wait, you turn yourself in late every time, so that's why it doesn't get in there. That's it. You don't have to really, and then he's gonna flop around. You're just gonna go, no, look, man, here's the issue. You're turning your stuff in late. Do you know you're turning stuff in late? There's your asking questions that you espouse. And then he's gonna go, he's going to admit to it like he admitted eventually with your client. But yeah, the not apologizing thing, I was guilty of that for a lot of years, where I would apologize a lot because I was trying to be, I felt it was being empathetic. I wasn't really sorry, but like I was trying to soften the blow, as you've talked about it, and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here, let's recommunicate why you're a dumbass. Not you personally, but the employee. Just want to make that clear on the people who aren't watching the video. Right. And it would backfire, and it's not a strong position. It's not a strong position of leadership. Leaders usually don't apologize. There's ways of saying, I must have not communicated effectively, which is the same as saying that person's a dumbass. But no, it's code.
But it's also saying, like, in this situation, to be able to say, I hear your frustration.
Yeah, there you go. It's a different way of putting it. Yeah. And I like that way a lot better.
Yeah. I know you're frustrated. It's a pain. It's a pain that your materials don't get included. So what can we do to get them included?
I'd still tell them, this is on you, man.
Oh,
what can you do?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But that's how I roll. And I don't think a lot of people have that sort of thing. Being an entrepreneur at 18 and stuff, I think I had a little bit more moxie when I worked for other people with my whole attitude. But, that's why I'm an entrepreneur. I don't work well with others. So I don't know how far I would have ever made it in corporate, but I don't know. I might have made it really far. I don't know. It would have been interesting. I always seem to jump over 3 to 4 levels of management, mainly because people are just like, this guy's really an asshole. Someone should make him a boss.
I don't recommend the asshole way of leadership. That's not usually the road I go down.
That's my next book coming out next year. So there you go. Yeah, I would totally agree with you. We're throwing a lot of comedy here, folks.
Yeah.
The attorneys say I have to make that disclosure now because I've been calling it back so hard on the show. So Julie, you're one of 30 global master trainers with Emergenetics.
Yeah.
Emergenetics.
Yep.
Tell us about that and what that is.
Yeah, so it's a phenomenal assessment tool that people take online, and there's so many good tools out there. But the reason that I became a master trainer with Emergenetics is it not only helps people understand themselves, but it really helps people interact, and it simplifies that human interaction. So I understand where my teammates are coming from. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about give people the information that they need. So Emergenetics it's a one-page profile that once people are trained and they understand it, they can see, okay, this is who Chris is. This is how I need to communicate with Chris. And it was through understanding and learning about Emergenetics, which I use with all of my clients, with teams, with individuals, with entire organizations. I've put our county's DA's office, I think there are about 200 people in the DA's office, put the whole teams through Emergenetics so they can communicate with each other really effectively. And what I figured out as I was developing and learning my own skills and understanding how people communicate is I developed the titanium rule. So we all know about the golden rule. And the titanium rule takes it to a new level of speak to others the way they want and need to be spoken to. Because
I love that.
Most of the time, when I see communications break down or there's miscommunication of some kind, it's because I'm talking to you the way and giving you the information that I need. I'm not thinking about you as my audience, and I'm not speaking to you as my audience. I'm basically speaking to myself. And again, that's not a conversation. It's not a dialogue, and that's where communication breaks down. And again, it is work, right? We talked about it's not easy, that you have to think about who you're talking to, what the circumstances are, and the impact you're trying to have.
in that titanium rule, there's the word need, that they need to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so you correct me if I'm wrong, but let me throw this out to you as my theory on that, because sometimes that's how I do look at people, what they need to hear from me.
Yeah.
And so at times where I'm going to deliver tough love or straight talk or very, a raw conversation, I think, it's important that they hear my voice, that, it comes from a place of caring and love, as I have my hands around their throat. But, I think of the example of the guy we talked about earlier, who was slumming it in for 35 years, sending in his stuff late. He knew he was being manipulative, very much likely being manipulative. And probably has, who, God knows what sort of reason he was doing that for. It's a passive aggressive sort of thing. Maybe he was just being a dick, like Steve Jobs used to, never have a license plate and always parking handicapped. It might have been narcissistic behavior. Who knows? But in that case, what he needed to be told was not maybe what he thought he needed to be told. What he needed to be told, he needed to be straight talking, he needed to be put in his place and let him know that you're not sliding that bullshit over my desk. I mean, that's usually what happens with me and a lot of people when they try and gaslight me, or they try and shovel something across my desk, or they try and pitch something at me to see if I'm a sucker, if something's going to go. So to me, that word need doesn't necessarily always mean that you need to be talked to in some sort of, way that you're going to be babied. Sometimes you just might need me to wake you up from your little sleep, thing, and your little participation trophy that your parents put you through and train you in. And you need to have a man talk to you and lead you and tell you how it is. I don't know.
Yep. And yes, if you've built that foundation of trust, they can hear that hard message.
They can. Usually the hands around the throat starts with the building the foundation of trust. I think isn't that the foundation position? No, I'm just
no, not at all. Not at all.
Damn it.
Yeah. But when I say what they need and want, it's what they need. And sometimes what they need is not what they want.
There you go. I think you just said what I was trying to say in the long round.
Yeah.
So you win the direct course line. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is really thinking about, I need to give a tough message to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I need to tell him to stop throwing people out the second floor window.
Damn it.
Right. And I know that you're the kind of person that's, let's just say, as a data guy. So I'm going to come to you and say, hey, listen, Chris, 99% of people who get thrown out of second floor windows do not survive. Is that really what you're aiming for?
Kind of.
Oh, no, not really. I just want to hurt them a little bit, but I don't.
It's fun to see if they bounce. I mean, that's kind of the thing. But you made me change my paradigm in it. I'm only going to do first stories now.
Okay. Well, that's good, because most people.
Yeah. Because I care.
Yeah, not really.
So don't tell my secrets, Julie.
Yeah.
So Julie, as we go out, give us a pitch out on what you do. You've got an exemplary website with all your training and resources on here. Tell people what they do, how they can reach out to you, how they can request for consultations and on board with your services.
Yeah. So definitely go to my website, juliehalunga.com. You can take a trust assessment. It takes about 7 minutes to complete, if not less. And it'll show you where the gaps are, whether it's within your teams or within your leadership. And then we can work on those kinds of things. Typically when a leader comes to me for their teams, maybe some challenging people within their teams or across teams or individuals, we'll talk about what they want to achieve, like what's the desired outcome. And then I'll offer them different services that may help them. So it's really a case by case. This is not like off the shelf, here you go kind of services. And I do, team facilitation. I do retreats. I work with teams. Usually it's not a one-stop thing. It's usually starts at the retreat and then we meet monthly. I have seen too often those lunch and learns or one and done things don't work. As I said, I'm on this mission to rid the world of lazy leaders, and I'm not going to do that in a 1 hour lunch. So I typically develop a relationship within a firm, within an organization, and then I'm able to see the culture and get to know the leaders and then really make a change for everyone, and a lasting change. That's what I'm going for. That's what fuels me. yes, I run a business, but if I don't have that fueling piece, then it's not worth it to me.
There you go. And then you have a free gift on your website. People can download 5 game-changing principles to empower leaders.
Yes. And I would suggest, I always love to leave these conversations with action that people can take. And here's some couple of things that you can do that will change your communication and allow you to be more of that deliberate, engaging leader, not the lazy one. So stop apologizing. We talked about that. Eliminate any negative or weak language like I think or I believe, and that conditional language, and adopt words like I recommend, I suggest, I'm confident. And you can always watch my TED Talk as well. That goes into more detail about it.
I like that suggest, because you're still not saying commands. You're still not saying just go do it.
Right. And if someone's going to push back, like if you're dealing with a really difficult client, they're going to push back. Better that they push back where you're coming from like a confident stance. Sure. As opposed to a meek one.
Yeah. I mean, conflict, subtle conflict, or I don't know, stuff that doesn't involve, hand-to-hand combat battle and weapons is sometimes good too for flushing out objectives, resistance, flushing out resistance. We're breaking people's resistance, flushing out objections, flushing out understanding. Maybe someone's being resistant because they don't understand the vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
And all that good stuff. One other thing you have is Women's Catalyst Network, an incubator for mid-career women.
Yes. And that is something that organizations, companies bring me in to work with a small cohort of their leaders over a 6-month, 8-month time frame to help them through all the things that we've talked about today and more.
There you go. Oh, Julie, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Very insightful. Give us your .coms one more time as we go out.
It's juliehalunga.com, and I can be found on LinkedIn at Julie Halunga as well.
There you go. Thank you, Julie, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, the big LinkedIn newsletter, the 130,000 LinkedIn group over there. What else is there? Chris Voss one on the tickety-tockety, and Chris Voss, Facebook.com. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.